This is the New York City FC Pregame Live. Tonight, New York City head to the Windy City to take on the Chicago Fire. And now, for the 400th broadcast in club history, it's Glenn Crooks and Matty Lawrence.
And we are at the iconic Soldier Field, where City will meet the Chicago Fire. This building, the Chicago Bears played their first game here in the NFL in 1926, and they've still retained a little bit of the old nature of the big stadium, especially on the outside with the columns. And it's really a wonderful place to come. You do see the football lines. The NFL's Chicago Bears played here recently, which was a point of discussion on both sides of the ledger as Chicago prepared for New York City FC here in the Windy City. And also happening today, we are celebrating our 400th English radio broadcast of the New York City Football Club. I mean, is anybody applauding?
We patting ourselves on the back now. Brilliant.
It's well, you know, we the club has and I'm Roberto Abramowitz, who's also part of all this. Thank you so much. Has delivered I like a dark roast black coffee, and I don't know. I was up early.
Well, it is your 400th broadcast, so you should be. People should be waiting on your hand and foot.
Right. Plus, I should be pretty tired, so I need the coffee.
Absolutely.
You know, and we're gonna bring in a special guest at a moment. This is really, it is a milestone, and I'm happy to share that along the way. So Matty's been with me. You know, we haven't calculated how many games we've done together. It was a lot.
Far too many.
And the guy I'm going to bring in a moment, we did a bunch of games together as well. But here are some of the names of those who, along the way, whether Tom was absent, you were absent, there was a period of time where I went on the road and I ended up getting guest commentators, kind of a deal we worked through the club. Jason Hernandez, former New York City center back, who is now the general manager of Toronto FC. He did about a half dozen games. Chris Wingert did a few games, the St. John's legend and RSL legend, and New York City, like Hernandez. He was part of that original team in 2015. Anton Tinnerholm, while he was injured, sat and did one game for me at DC United, and it was I felt bad for him because that is one of the least favorable broadcast positions. I'll just put it that way in MLS. Ian Joy came on with me once out in L.A. Joe Tollison a couple of times has filled in. So your two favorite regional television commentators who, unfortunately for them, and I think a lot of supporters feel the same way, were eliminated from the structure because of the contract with Apple and the way they went about forming their broadcast teams. Paul Shaw, you set me up with him.
I did, yeah.
That was in Orlando. John Bloom, who's a longtime coach at Ohio State with the men, so went there. New York City played Columbus. He came on and did commentary with me. Grace Lear, second half, remember, at Nashville. She's now a recording star out of Nashville, Grace Lear, but was a goal scorer at the University of California, was captain of that team, and also was a finalist on American Idol. I think it was for things like that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was American Idol. And then John Rojas, and this is pretty interesting because John was a partner with Roberto Abramowitz on the Spanish side for a couple of seasons, but because of a quirk in schedule, Matty was unavailable. And in Portland at the MLS Cup final, it was myself and John Rojas
what a
who was
great
living
game
there
to
at
miss.
the time. So all those highlights I'm going to play from that game, Matty's nowhere to be seen. But the guy who I started with and is really responsible for this coming together, and I can't wait to tell the story, is Tom Kolker. Let's bring him in. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Tom
hey, guys.
Kolker. How are you, man?
I'm good. It's good to see your guys' faces, and thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. Now, Tom is in D.C. right now, which has been his home off and on, but through a majority of your growing up, right? This is where you grew up.
Yeah, grew up here. I can see RFK from the top of my row house. It's coming down right now, so there will be a nice stadium, but we're not far from Audi Field and Nationals Park and over here on Capitol Hill. But yeah, this is where I grew up and spent some time, as you know, as we talked about, on the West Coast in Portland, and did games for University of Portland and some stuff for the Timbers before, getting connected with you, Glenn, and starting, the first ever broadcast for New York City FC.
Well, first story I want to tell is RFK. So the first time Tom and I went there, it was a rainy day, and the press box had, you could see the sky. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. And it was wood, and it was rotting, and so our computers got soaked.
Oh my God, yep.
But the cutest thing, I will say cute, is when we got there, Tom and his family, they were season ticket holders of the Washington Redskins. So at one point, I'm wondering, where's Tom? And he was down in the stadium, and he went to sit in the seat that he had when he was a kid. That was a nice moment, Tom.
It was a really, I grew up going to that stadium, every Sunday, and it was a really cool moment to go back in for the first time. And probably been 15 years, 20 years since I'd been in the stadium. The last game they played was against the Dallas Cowboys, and people were literally ripping their seats from the stadium to try and take whatever they could. And so to go back and to actually broadcast the game there, and you're right, it was pouring. There was nothing protecting us. It was a great vantage point, but it was pouring into the booth. So we had towels covering the equipment.
I don't remember what the hell did we do? I guess we just got soaked.
We did, yeah, we did. It was amazing. It was even depleted back then, but it was a lot of fun to go back there and do a game.
All right, so we're celebrating number 400, our 400th English radio broadcast, and we're bringing back one of the original members of the team, Tom Kolker. Now, I want to tell this story because these kinds of things are incredible to me. So Tom knew Mark Chernoff, who was the program director at WFAN through his association with the Nets, and on the basketball side. I knew Mark because he hired me at a station called WDHA in 1980 out of college as the sports director for this WDHA. He was the music director and the program director. We became good friends. He was very close with my wife because they had worked together, and Mark went to Rutgers University, so there was an association there. Well, fast forward 35 years, and I called him up out of the blue. I'm retiring from Rutgers, and I said, Mark, I'm looking for a soccer gig, man. He goes, well, just so happens that in order to sign the Yankees contract, we have to do the first 3 years of this new soccer team. And Tom and I know just how happy Mark was to have soccer on WFA. And for those 3 years. But anyway, he goes, hey, and I'd like you to, maybe think about working with this guy, Tom Kolker. And I didn't know who Tom was. So we got together. But Mark said, you got to come up with some sort of a tape. You guys have to come up with a tape. So Tom had the equipment, and we went to a Sky Blue game at Rutgers University and sat in the bleachers with his equipment. He did the play-by-play first half. I did color. We just flip-flopped each half. Yeah. And that's the tape we gave to Mark Chernoff. And like a week later, we were hired. So it was like, all right, man.
Yeah, I'll never forget sitting in this. Yeah, I will never forget sitting in the stands doing that. We had just literally equipment set up in front of us, and luckily the weather was better that day than it was at RFK. Yeah,
if it wasn't raining, or we would have been.
It's funny that it's one of the first things I think about when I think back to all the broadcasts that we've all been a part of, and that the special time when the three of us were doing the games together. But I go back to the first ever broadcast we did in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember this, Glenn, but I think it was the clocks were either going back or forward. So that day, that first game, we got to the stadium like 20 minutes before kickoff because for whatever reason, we were off on the time. So we got there.
I remember scrambling, but I don't.
We were
remember
scrambling,
that being the reason.
And the kid who was doing all of the production for us was freaking out because we weren't there. So we literally get to we're taking our time. We're kind of walking around the stadium, enjoying.
I remember we ran into Tony Taylor's parents.
Yeah,
Tony Taylor.
And so we walk into the booth, and I just start unpacking my stuff, and this kid is freaking out because we're supposed to be on the air in 15 minutes. And people from WFAN are wondering where we are.
What a way to start!
Oh my God!
Broadcast.
So literally that's why Glenn always now turns up 7 hours early. That's why he drags us out of bed at 8 a.m. to come here. It's because of that.
Yeah, 100%. So that was wild. Just thinking back that the first ever actual regular season broadcast in Orlando, first meeting between these two new franchises, and you and I are just strolling in there casually, and then we put on the headset, we just went. It was amazing. But we got through it.
Amazing. It was a Citrus Bowl, and the thing I remember about that game, Matty, is the purple. First of all, they had it at the Citrus Bowl, so there were over 60,000 at the game, but the city was really engaged, right? Remember, everything was purple. They even draped like a purple flag over the Capitol building, and it was pretty nutty, and it was nice. It gave you a good feel for what was the first game for both these teams, New York City and Orlando City. And Mix Discarute still holds the honor and always will of scoring the first goal for New York City.
That is a blast from the past. No, that was and there's so many amazing memories when I think about the games that we all got to do together, and even just the first game at Yankee Stadium against New England Revolution, and David Villa scored the first goal, and that was just, that atmosphere was so electric. Some of the players that have come through the organization that I had the chance to call, that we've had a chance to call, whether it was I'll never forget, one of the highlights for me was the first time Pirlo went into a match. And even before that, when they brought him to Yankee Stadium and he waved to the crowd, just seeing him there, or Frank Lampard, when we were down in training camp one year in Florida and getting to watch a Champions League game with Lampard and Patrick Vieira. That was such a cool moment for us. Or the first time we went to Florida to meet Patrick Vieira, and we went to training and he kicked us out.
Yeah, we took and they were way out there.
You didn't know who we were.
We got a car. It was at least 45 minutes. And got there. And Sam Cook, the director of communications, met us at the end of the driveway and said, he just said, guys, I'm really, really sorry. Because Sam was the one that said, yeah, come to training tomorrow. And so, I'm really, really sorry, Patrick. So what happened was, that night or the next night, they scrimmaged John Hark's FC Cincinnati team. This was at IMG in Florida. And we saw Patrick after the game. So Sam must have said something to him, or he must have known that we drove. I don't know what, but he looked at both of us. I don't know if you remember this, but he looked at us and he goes, "Are you guys coming to training tomorrow?" And I was like, "Well, are we allowed?" And he smiled. He goes, "Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just I'm not used to all this." And it's true. European managers, they're not used to having the broadcasters around or anybody around. And just remember the time we sat with Patrick eventually and did that long interview with him, which I think I aired on Sirius XM. I can't even remember. But he really got into what he was trying to do. And the thing we learned is this dude he's in meetings. I mean, every detail. He looked at every detail. And, it was a little bit different than his predecessor, Jason Kreis, who only lasted a season. And remember, we were with Jason down in South Carolina. Tom and I went to the very first preseason. Yeah. And, it was so cool to be there because, you were just getting these things going. And, the experiences we've had, Tom, and bringing up Mix Discarute and Patrick Vieira. And here we are in Chicago, right? And you did a lot of Chicago games. Well, Patrick Vieira's first match was not here at Soldier Field, but over at what they call now SeatGeek Stadium. And New York City won the match 4-3. And I'm going to ask you guys to name the goal scorers here in a minute. But what I remember most about it was Frederic Brilliant's first game. And David Accam, I don't even remember, Tom, but he was slicing up New York City, but in particular, Brilliant, who was on the right side of defense. Yes. And so Accam had like a goal and an assist, but New York City still came back and won at 4-3. Patrick Vieira's first game, also the first game for Velko Panovich, who was the new Chicago Fire coach at the time. But I remember going in the locker room like we did in those days. We went to the locker room right after the game. And I went over to Fred, and he looked disconsolate. And I said, "How you doing?" He just said, "That's the worst game I've ever played in my life." He was so sad. And now old Fred's a coach, and now he understands he's got to console the players every now and then with this one. Anything else that stands out in your time, Tom?
I mean, there's so many memories. I think you mentioned Portland, and the first time we went to do a game in Portland and 50,000 fans in Seattle. So just getting like the first taste of, how big soccer is, for a lot of folks on the East Coast, in the Northwest. Just the atmospheres. All the stadiums are nuanced and a little different. Some of the behind the scenes stuff for us. A lot of it, as Matty was saying, is getting to the stadium 7 hours early, or when we would all ride together and Roberto would have to explain to a parking attendant who we were and what we were trying to do.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed.
So, but no, I enjoyed my time, with you, Glenn, getting it started, and working with you, Matty, as well. And
and you mentioned the three of us working together, and that was during COVID.
Yeah.
And the year after COVID, Tom, where you kind of were then out of doing it on a regular basis, just maybe occasionally, was the year that New York City wins MLS Cup. And so, look, I'm going to play, and Tom, when you come, the other treat we have is Tom is going to join us to make a three-man booth 1 week from tonight against Charlotte at Yankee Stadium. I hope to have found some cuts with you, Tom, because in my initial search, I didn't do a very good job early on, especially the FAN days. I thought they had everything, and now we're gone, and who knows where that stuff is. But again, we're celebrating our 400th tonight, our 400th radio broadcast for the New York City Football Club. Now, this one is one of my favorites because of just the whole circumstance. This is the Eastern Conference semifinals. New York City had never advanced past this round in the playoffs. It's 2021. They're at New England, who had won the Supporters' Shield. And this is an extra time goal by Tati Castellanos. Hopefully I've got the right one here. Yes, let's look at it. Here it is. City's still on it with Morales. Finds Goody. And now it's Castellanos, the header, and a goal! It's an overtime goal for Tati Castellanos! And could that be the goal that sends New York City to their first conference final? Well, it was not. You imagine, he scores a goal in the 109th minute to make it 2-1. He gets his second yellow and gets ejected from the game just a few minutes later. Then Tajon Buchanan, the Syracuse whiz, he ties it up in the 118th minute. So they go to penalties, and Castellanos, who would have taken a penalty, wasn't there, couldn't do it. Maxi Morales, who had really had a tough time for the spot in his previous 10 attempts, he made his. They all made them, including Collins at the end. 5 for 5 against the goalkeeper of the year, Matt Turner. So that was a favorite of mine because of the oh my God, what happened afterwards, and they still advanced. Now, the next game is the Philadelphia Union for the Eastern Conference Final. The Union missing a lot of players due to COVID, which led to some sarcastic comments post-game from Jim Curtin, their coach. But he's gone, but certainly not forgotten, especially the fact that he scored this goal. Well-placed ball, Bizo there, so is Goody. Goody has some room. Here's Magno! It's the go-ahead goal from Gudmundur Thorarensen! It's 2-1 New York City FC with only 2 minutes left in regulation in the Eastern Conference Final. You wonder, will that be the moment that sends New York City to their first MLS Cup final? And it's Tyler Magno, the reserve striker here in the second half. Now that's a good dance. I bring that back anyway. So there's Magno, and this time I was right. That did send them to the finals that moment. But and there you go, and you're going to Portland. Tom Kolkerville, that's Tom spent a lot of time in Portland as a broadcaster, and so this is remarkable at this point. I mean, and the one thing I want to point out that's very consistent in those two clips is who delivered the ball. Gudmundur Thorarensen, who hit the free kick that tied Atlanta late, and New York City never lost another game the rest of the year to win MLS Cup. Gudmundur Thorarensen. So he was very valuable for New York City in the second half of the season because he and Molde Amundsen were going at it.
Yeah, they were. I think both of them played a big part in the history of NYCFC. I think almost it took a little while for Kevin O'Toole to really grow into being a professional footballer after coming in from Princeton till those guys were replaced. I don't think they were replaced until really this season, possibly last, when when Kevin O'Toole's really found his feet and has become turned into a very, very good left back at this level.
The starting lineups, Tom, by the way, and we're going to have you stick around. I got a couple of more things here, but Raul Gustavo is going to make his New York City debut tonight, and we looked it up. The last time he started a match, March the 30th,
yes, it was
2025.
Started
a long time. Yeah. How many months ago was that? What did you figure?
That's five and a half months ago. Yeah,
right.
and he played 54 minutes in that game, and he got injured. We've hardly seen. Well, he's hardly seen the field since.
And he's worked out with the club for about 2 weeks, so he's going to get the go tonight, and mostly because Andres Perea. I would assume that this is the result of Perea with his with his fifth yellow last week or 2 weeks ago against DC United. So he's out, suspended, yellow card accumulation. Justin Hackle moving to the midfield. That's what we figure based on the lineup we've seen. But let's just do one more. Now, I'm not going to show any of the MLS Cup, but I had Castellanos queued up his goal. Collins with the game-winning penalty and all the bedlam with John Rojas by my side. But I had Matty with me on this one, so I'm going to play this one. But this was exciting, too. So, Tom, you mentioned the big crowd, David Villa, home opener, scoring a goal in the victory against New England, over 48,000 at that game. Well, there hadn't been a 40,000-plus crowd since 2015 at Yankee Stadium until last year when Messi came to downtown with Inter Miami. And this is how the game ended. This is stoppage time. Miami is up 1-0 at the time. Here's the corner ball, far corner, bent in. And it's James Sands with his first career goal! How about that? Drake Hollander, hands on hip, showing his frustration. New York City FC. It was the Fernandez free kick that ricocheted out for a corner. And at the death, Sands got inside of Thomas Avalos at the top of the six. And what a time for Sands, the 24-year-old, the first homegrown signed by the club to get his first career goal. It's the leveler here in front of 44,000 plus. And how about that, Matty?
What a time to score your first. And the performance of NYCFC deserved this. You don't always get what you deserve for in football, but they deserve at least a point here. And the referee's looking at the watch and blowing the whistle, Glenn.
That was it.
That was awesome.
The last moment. So that was pretty thrilling because it was also the first time, despite the fact that Messi had been around a bit, it was the first time that he had been healthy enough to play in a New York City match. So, to be able to, like you said earlier, Villa, Pirlo, Lampard, I got the same feeling, Tom, about Pirlo when he entered. That was, I always remember the date, July 25th, 2015. It was against Orlando City. Yep. He was brilliant in the game. So was Kyle Larin, who had a hat trick for Orlando. New York City managed to get enough to beat Orlando on the day. So that was among the many highlights during the course of this 400 games broadcast. Well, tonight's the 4th. We've only done 399, so hopefully we get on the air.
Let's hope so.
The equipment seems to be working, so hopefully. All right, Tom, hang with us here while we let's preview this game here a little bit tonight. The Chicago Fire just one loss in their last 7 games, and as Matty Lawrence pointed out, as we were kind of kibitzing a little bit prior to the game, the last 4 home games have really gone well for them. 3 wins, and a draw. But compare that to their prior 10.
Yeah, they've won 10 points from their last 4 home games, and they'd only won 10 points in their first 10 home games. So, they've really turned things around here at home. But even so, they have turned it around so much. They're a better team away from home than they are at home. At home, they've won 36% of their games, and away from home, they've won 50%. So, look, they're not as strong here at home, but certainly in the last little stretch, they've been very good. And we know they score goals. This is a team that score goals, but also knows how to let in goals as well. I think they've scored the second most and conceded the second most in this conference as well. So there's normally goals in their game. Don't get many clean sheets, and they don't not score in many games. So hopefully this will now be a 0-0. Now I've talked it up.
And Tom, we did a lot of the Chicago games. New York City, sort of like against Montreal, just dominant against the Fire. And, only 3 losses in 23 games. Now there have been 8 draws and then 12 New York City wins. But in Chicago, only 3 of those 12 wins. So we've seen it a little bit on both sides.
Yeah, and it always seems like with the Chicago games, there's a lot of high scoring. There's always some red cards. There's always some drama. It's good.
Well, there were 2 red. They played earlier this year, 3-1.
Yep.
And Gutierrez got red carded in the first half.
Yep.
And then Davila, he ended up getting red carded in the 84th minute, a red card that was rescinded midweek by MLS. So it was disputed at the time, but New York City was in command at the time as well. They ended up winning 3-1 in the first game they played.
Yeah, they did. I think we'll find that it's a very different Chicago Fire team, one that's much more full of confidence, and has also brought in a few decent players. I think you and I, Glenn, have said a number of times, the front 3, specifically Zinkernagel and Kuipers, are very, very good up top. There's a reason they've scored 53 goals this season. I think there's only one other team in the Eastern Conference who've scored more than them. They are very, very good going forward. Actually, I'm just looking at the table. Orlando and Miami have both scored 54, but the team today, Chicago Fire, scored 53. So there's just the 2 teams who scored more than them. It's only a goal more.
They've conceded 50 and only 2 teams in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, Montreal and DC United, who, by the way, have 3 wins and a draw in their 4 games against New York City. That's a whole nother story, coming off the loss against DC United after a 5-game stretch without a loss, including a win over FC Cincinnati again. So New York City continues to be, although not quite to the same extent, an enigma, because you're not 100% sure what you're going to get from game to game. Now, Tom, the playoff picture, Chicago, they last qualified for a playoff game in 2017. They last won a playoff game well before we started doing these broadcasts. We would have been close to 1,000 broadcasts since the last time they won a playoff game. It was 2009. And I want to tell the story here because they beat New England in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Excuse me. Yes. And then they beat New England, and then they lost to RSL in the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the part of the story that's interesting. How did RSL get into the Eastern Conference Finals, you ask? I asked it too, so I looked it up because I had no idea. Wild card teams back then could be shifted into the opposite conference during the playoff rounds because there were 15 teams in the league. So you had the unbalanced stuff. So there you go. Fun fact, huh, Tom?
There you go.
You can take that to the dinner table tonight. Just
you were still on the sidelines at Rutgers, right? During that time.
That's true. I was.
But Chicago.
2009 was a good year too, I think.
Yeah. But Chicago's right coming in tonight, only 2 points behind New York City in the standings.
True.
So it's a huge game for both teams.
Well, it's definitely one of these 6-point games. Would you say? So New York City's 2 points ahead of them in the standings, with a game in hand. New York City has a game in hand. So if Chicago lost this game, that would be difficult for them, except for the fact that the Red Bulls have to come out to Portland later on tonight. So that's going to be a difficult task for them. And Chicago has a game in hand on the Red Bulls, who are in 10th below the table. They're in danger of missing the playoffs for the first time in, 17 years? Or something like that,
they're in big trouble if they lose tonight. And, well, certainly if Chicago Fire won as well. But then let's not forget New York Red Bulls got to play NYCFC. So there's still going to be a number of twists and turns. And, of course, NYCFC's game in hand falls this Wednesday at home to Columbus. Columbus are obviously a very good team as well. But, look, if NYCFC win today, then win that game in hand. And I know I'm getting a long way ahead of myself. But with 2 wins out of 2 for NYCFC, in my opinion, they'd be virtually assured of those playoffs.
Well, we're looking forward to this one. Just one more thought, Tom, on international call-ups. Matt Freese for the U.S. men seems to be the clear number 1 right now. Alonso Martinez scored his 6 goals for Costa Rica. There's no question. If they qualify for the World Cup, they're in the early stages of that. He'll be one of the guys running around up top. And Aiden O'Neill will certainly be in the midfield next summer for Australia. He played in 2 friendlies. Costa Rica, they had a difficult time of it with a couple of draws. And the Australia played a couple of friendlies with New Zealand as a qualification has concluded there. All right, Tom. Any final thoughts for the for the world? From DC. I mean, how are things in DC? The new police state in our country. Don't comment.
No comment on that, please.
No, I'll just say I appreciate you guys having me on. Have a great broadcast. It was a thrill to be a part of something like this, especially when it's new and being a part of something, and getting to do games with Glenn and Matt. And Glenn, tip of the cap to you, because you've been the constant through all of this since 10 years. I mean, that's a heck of a run, and I enjoyed doing every game with you guys. So
let me
appreciate you having me on.
Look, here's a picture of you.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I'm trying to figure out where that is.
Why do I always look so good in photos? That's the one thing I'm curious about.
You're so photogenic. That's why.
And you guys are supposed to say I haven't aged a bit, or I look better, or something.
You got a face for radio.
Yeah, well, that too.
Well, have a great broadcast, guys.
Thanks, Tom. Thank
you so much for having me on.
See you next week.
Yeah, I'll see you guys next week in New York.
And I'll pick you up at the train station. Don't worry, I'll be there.
You better.
Okay, so we've got coming up at 7:15 local, but 8:15 Eastern, the pregame show with Pascal Janssen, presented by Ford. That's coming up, and then our live commentary kickoff scheduled for 8:40 Eastern, 7:40 local here on the New York City FC
Network.
Let's
not forget that it's Harry Potter night here today, so we expect lots of wizardry on the field, and us muggles here in the booth are going to pull it together. And you with your American football calls as the lines are down there on the field.
I have one American football call. I'm going to send you that clip, Tom, when it happens.
Yeah, when there's a long ball at the end,
exactly.
Right? It's going to be a Hail Mary.
Hail Mary.
All right.
Over the top.
For Tom and Matty, I'm Glenn, and we look forward to talking to you in just a few minutes. But thanks for joining us here on NYCFC Pregame Live.